How are all of you lovely people doing today? My name is John, and welcome to another wonderful episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A. This is a series where I take your questions about the zombie storyline and I answer them. Whether it's a big, a small, or a simple question, I'm more than happy to answer them. You can either leave your questions down below or tweet me at JohnnyJ25. By the way, we recently hit 10,000 followers on Twitter. Thank you so much for following me on Twitter. I appreciate you guys supporting me like that. Here's to the next 10,000. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, a link is in the description as always. Enough of that jazz, let's get to the episode. So today's episode will begin with a question from Marcus Pistilili, who asks, how does the Weasel know Nikolai? This is a question a lot of people have been asking me ever since we heard this quote from the Weasel on Mob of the Dead several years ago.
Nikolai. Why do I keep hearing that name?
People want to know, John, why does the Weasel know Nikolai? And this was a question I initially wrote off as maybe just fan service, because it didn't really make sense for the Weasel to know who Nikolai was. Think about it. Nikolai, most likely at the time, is living in Russia, or he's fighting in a war somewhere else in the world. It definitely wouldn't be in the United States. How would a Russian know an American living in Alcatraz? It was strange. It didn't make sense. Nikolai never spoke about a person named Al Arlington or a person named the Weasel. These characters, in theory, shouldn't know each other. And we also hadn't delved into the rabbit hole of multiple universes yet as the storyline progressed. Mob of the Dead was our first introduction to an alternate universe, but at the time we still imagined our zombie storyline as a linear story, and we imagined that everything progressed in a line, not in a branching tree as we imagine it now. So, this idea that the Weasel and Nikolai knew one another was preposterous, and this quote didn't have much of an explanation. It really just boggled our minds in the community. Now, as we all know, multiverses have become an unfortunate part of the zombie storyline, and this opens the door to some explanations, especially as we progress through the story and there have been new developments with many of our characters, and we can begin to explain why the Weasel may hear Nikolai in his head. Now, I want to first make a disclaimer. A number of people, or at least some people, have been getting upset with me because many of my answers have been theoretical. I've been sharing a lot of theories with you guys rather than giving you definitive answers. Some of you want definitive answers, and unfortunately, I can't always bring you that. The way the zombie storyline works right now is that we have the multiverse, and in the multiverse, almost anything can happen, and nothing is definitive. Treyarch is keeping things very secretive, and they aren't explaining things. You guys have all these questions for me, and I do my best to answer them, and unfortunately, all I can do, the best I can do right now, is give you the leading theories, and that's what I do right now. I'm not making this stuff off of my head, and while I don't have as much proof as, say, a cutscene, I try to provide as many primary sources as possible in an effort to answer your questions as best as we currently can with our current understanding of the zombie storyline. So, these answers are going to be theoretical, and if that upsets you, I apologize, but you're going to have to bear with me. These are our best explanations. One of the first things you might suspect is that maybe Nikolai collected the blood of the Weasel. We know that at the end of the Zetsuba no Shima Easter egg, our characters went off and collected some blood. Nikolai can be seen carrying blood vials that he did not have after or before the Easter egg of Zetsuba no Shima. We were also told very early on in Black Ops 3 that only the cursed survived. The characters in Shadows of Evil are cursed. They have the mark of the beast on their hand. Because they have the mark of the beast on their hand, maybe they have cursed blood. The Mob of the Dead characters find themselves in a situation very similar to the situation of our characters in Shadows of Evil. They are trapped in this purgatory and they're being punished for their sins. Now, because there are a lot of similarities, maybe the Mob of the Dead characters are also cursed and their blood is cursed as well. Possibly, the blood of those who are cursed will allow you to survive an impending apocalypse, or an impending doom. Our characters supposedly will fail. There is a darker path ahead of them, and Richtofen says the blood will allow him to survive. The blood will keep him safe. Is it the blood of the cursed that he's carrying? We know he's carrying the blood of two members of Alcatraz. They seem to be cursed in some kind of prison. It wouldn't be too far-fetched to suggest that Richtofen went back to the Mob of the Dead, and this time Nikolai collected the blood of the Weasel. The Weasel's blood had not been collected yet, so it wouldn't be too far-fetched to suggest that maybe that's where Nikolai got his blood, and that's how the Weasel knows who Nikolai is. That's just one idea. Another suggestion is the idea of merging universes. If you listen to many of the radios from Dr. Maxis in Zetsubud no Shima, he often talks about himself merging with other beings, possibly other versions of himself. He sees his body change before his very own eyes. Memories and ideas and information is being planted into his brain, but it's not his own information, and it's not his own memories. They're coming from beings beyond him. They're coming from life forms that aren't himself. And maybe that's the same thing that's happening to the Weasel. Maybe through our characters meddling with the different universes, Nikolai is in some way, shape, or form entering the mind of the Weasel, and the Weasel is hearing Nikolai in his head because of all the nonsense that is happening in the universe. Now, like I said, there is no proof. These are just theories based on our current understanding of the zombie storyline. If this is the case, though, this means that Treyarch was planting the very seeds of what was going on in the future of the zombie storyline within Mob of the Dead, and this is something we can go back and look on as like, oh hey, clever Treyarch, I can't believe you slipped this one in there, well done. But we're gonna have to wait and see. For now, this is the best we can do to answer these questions. Moving on, I'd now like to take a follow-up comment from last week's episode where I discussed the possibilities of the Shadow Man and him being in the Summoning Key. Now, Joshe Centeno wrote a comment that said, "Premise is going to fail because the Shadow Man is in there." And you're right, when you say there, you're referring to the Summoning Key, and the Shadow Man is located inside the Summoning Key. We trapped him during the Easter egg. However, I don't know if that's exactly why Premise is going to fail. You see, when you first enter a game of Shadows of Evil, and you're trapped behind that fence and you haven't even collected the Summoning Key, you can find the piece of paper that includes the cipher mentioning our characters failing. You can solve it, and it will say, although they have discovered the way, Premise will fail, and you don't even have to start the Easter egg. You don't even have to begin the rituals in order to collect the souls, which means that this letter was written before the Shadow Man entered the Summoning Key. And as a result, the Shadow Man inside the Summoning Key cannot be the reason Premise will fail. Now, this doesn't mean the Shadow Man inside the Summoning Key won't be an issue. I would bet that that probably will be a problem as we progress into the later maps, although I would imagine there is a solution for this problem, or Richtofen will be able to figure out a solution as to how we deal with the Shadow Man in the Summoning Key. What will most likely happen is we collect Nikolai and we go on to do whatever we do with those souls. And then when we set them free or we use them in some way, out comes the Shadow Man. He does some tricky black magic, but we work around that. I don't think that's exactly why Premise will fail. And it seems while Premise will fail because of the blood, we should be able to work around that as well. That at least is my prediction. Today's episode will now end with a question from FaZe Hoy, who asks, how are different timelines formed? Oftentimes, I'm talking about the multiverse theory, and if you watch Zombros, we're always talking about the multiverse theory. That seems to be one of those topics we can't escape, and despite having talked about it a million times, we always find new ways to discuss the multiverse theory. Some people, when we talk about it, think that we're copping out, or we're taking the easy way, or that the multiverse theory is just nonsense, and it isn't actually the case. But it really is, and it's been proven to have existed in the zombie storyline, and it may theoretically exist in your own life, and you would have no way of knowing. There could be millions of universes right now, very similar, but all different to your own, and you'd have no idea. And in order to understand the multiverse theory in zombies, I think we need to understand the multiverse theory in real life. One of the earliest theorizings of the multiverse theory comes from Erwin Schrödinger. You may have heard of Schrödinger's cat. The idea is that there is a cat in a box. This box is soundproof, this box cannot move, however, it can be opened, and inside this box is a cat rigged up to a contraption. Now, this contraption has a random probability of killing the cat. There is a 50% chance that the cat will live in the next hour or that the cat will die in the next hour, and you have no way of knowing. In an hour, the only way you could find out whether or not the cat was alive or dead is by opening the box. In the time leading up to the box being opened, the cat actually exists in two positions at once. This is called a quantum superposition. The cat is both alive and dead at the same time. And when you open that box, the universes collapse into one, and the cat is either alive or the cat is dead. But there is an alternate reality in which the opposite of what happened in your universe happened in the other. Suddenly, two new universes were born from one event. And this is the birthplace of the multiverse theory. It's this idea that every interaction, every decision, every random chance creates 2, 3, 4, an infinite number of universes, and it branches out like a giant tree. And the idea is that this is happening in the zombie storyline as well. So as we're playing a game and you make a number of different decisions, whether you purchase a trap, purchase a gun, hit the mystery box, and of course the mystery box has several different options which creates several different universes, you are making millions and thousands of different universes. And in theory, you can jump from universe to universe to universe, and as you mess with different universes, you either change them, or maybe you collapse them, or maybe you create more universes. And this is what's going on in the zombie storyline. Supposedly, some of the characters have gone from universe to universe and created chain reactions that have rippled through many different universes, because in some ways they're all interconnected and have made them pretty shitty. And that seems to be what's going on right now. That seems to be what we're trying to correct. Although, as we mess with the universes, we're starting to see unforeseen consequences. It's like in time travel movies when our characters try to change the past, but when they do so, the future isn't what they wanted it to be. I hope this clears up a bit of confusion involving the multiverse theory, and if you'd like, you could actually read up on it further. There are tons of papers that have been published about the multiverse theory, and it is a pretty interesting read that actually has some bearing and effect on your own life, if you'd like to actually dig into that. Or you can stay in the realm of zombies, which is a perfectly fun way to explore the idea of different universes. And Phase, to answer your question, how are different timelines formed? Well, whenever our characters make a decision, an action, or something occurs by chance randomly, multiple universes have been formed. In addition to that, Jason Blundell has hinted at the idea that every time we teleport, a new universe has been created, so that's a possibility as well. Either way, it doesn't matter how the universes are formed, just imagine that there are millions and billions and trillions of universes all interconnected through a series of random events and decisions, and as a result, they all kind of affect one another, and by changing one, we may actually change other universes, and that seems to be what our characters are attempting to do, or at least attempting to undo. That's going to wrap things up for this episode of the Zombie Storyline Q&A. If you enjoyed the video, please do give it a like and maybe subscribe for more. I'm going to be uploading multiple as always, and if you enjoyed this one, I'm sure you'll enjoy the next one. Have a fantastic day, and bye.